Well, hello, hello, hello. Time for the Teacher Talk Show. We are about to start. Hello, Miss Baldwin. Just request to get on the live. And I. Hello, Raquel Cuts. How are you?
All right, can you hear me?
Yes,
My
I can hear
sister.
you. How you
How are
doing?
you? Look, I'm just excited and delighted to be on the #1 teacher talk show on all of social media. Okay. Yes,
Well, I am
indeed.
delighted and excited to have you, sir. I'm so glad
Thank
that
you,
I'm
man.
trying to make sure we get everything together.
Okay.
I am
Okay.
so
Okay.
happy to have you, Mr. Baldwin. It's such an honor.
I assure you, the pleasure is mine, my dear sister. We got
I
Sister
think.
Graves, always my pleasure. My daughter's on. Uh, the
Hey,
good
hi, daughter.
Raquel
Hampton.
Queen,
That's
yes, from Hampton, and my
I'm her
other
aunt. She don't even know I'm
Charlotte
her
in
aunt. So
California. She's gonna find out today. So she's gonna find out today that you're auntie. That's what's up. I really am excited. I really
yes,
am.
yes. I'm just let people file in. I'm so
Okay.
excited, Mr. Baldwin, to
All
have
right.
this conversation with you. And I was thinking, I was like, I have to include my good brother. I've been knowing you for so long, and you do so many great things on and off campus, because you're the man out here. So,
You really are making my head swell. I mean, you make my heart so happy.
we watch your playbook. I had the honor of working with you as a dean before and assistant. I'm just so honored, like I said, to have this conversation with you so we can
Well,
talk
thank
about
you.
these disparities that's going on
Yeah.
in our community and within our schools, and we see it all the time. And you used to be a educator, a special educator, excuse me.
Yes, that's right. That's right. You're
Yep.
special ed.
And I know through all your accoutrements and accolades, you taught me those two words. And with
No.
all your plaques that are in your office,
Yeah.
I
We
know
packed them up now, though. Yeah, we packed
you
Ms.
have
Lewis, we packed them up.
right. You have the experience and the reason that I was trying to get Mr. Shabazz, since he's non-social media, to get on.
Yeah.
But I have this also posted on my YouTube page, so people
Okay.
can view it that way also. But I want to give
Wonderful.
you an introduction before we start. And we are at 10 people. We have a whole bunch of people. Hello, everybody. Welcome. All right, let's see. So we have a whole bunch of TC staff here too. Some of my good teacher friends and your friends also.
Yes,
But,
yes.
so Mr. Baldwin, how's your day today?
My day is great. Again, I am truly honored to be on, again, the #1 teacher talk show on all of social media. And I truly am honored, Ms. Lewis. I consider you a good friend, my sister. And I just want to take this moment to publicly applaud the work that you have done for so many years to ensure that all students have an opportunity to be successful, and your special focus on those who have traditionally been marginalized, those students who have special needs that need more support. And I just applaud you for, during the dual pandemic of systemic racism and COVID-19, for keeping their needs to the forefront. And so again, your show has been phenomenal. both of your shows, by the way. Uh,
Thank you.
so again, thank you for having me.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I can't even give you a proper introduction without, reading my cards because, you have done so much and you're like I said, you're a legend. All right, in Alexandria and throughout the community. But today, guys, we have a wonderful, wonderful talk show today. And Mr. Baldwin was too kind giving me all of those compliments. I'm just doing my job. I'm of service, like you say, when you walk around the building. I'm just here to serve.
You did
Mr.
it.
Baldwin is the Director of Restorative Practices for the Center of Youth and Family Advocacy. And his goal is to use the restorative practices. He also do these things within the school building, and we have restorative circles for teachers and staff and for students, right? And he wants to transform, right, the juvenile legal system by improving the outcomes of young people. He do this work every single day. So I just want to make sure that we all know that this is an honor. We have this man who has been an educator and in the system of education for over 30 years. So that's a long time, Mr. Baldwin, know.
Yeah,
and within your Greek community, you also are of service. So let's get into the nitty gritty. All right.
Okay.
And today's topic is about dismantling the preschool to prison pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
Before I let you get into your spiel, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the data. I know what the data looks like in real time. We have experienced the disparities that our young Black and brown males go through on a daily basis. I've seen it on the teaching side. I've seen it on the behavioral side. I've seen it through instructional practices and displacement of students in classes and courses. And we've also seen the ugly heads of racism inside of the classroom and in the building through various instances where students go through inside the classroom. So even though people may say, oh, it's a majority, it's a diverse school, or my kid goes to a school in African-American county, no matter where it is, right? This issue is important and it is pertinent and it is something that is really, really taking our students down the wrong path. So I'm going to let you open it up and let's have this conversation about what's going on.
Sure. So thank you again, Ms. Lewis, for doing such a beautiful job laying the foundation. So yes, during this dual pandemic of systemic racism and COVID-19, we've seen the disparities even really become a lot wider. And so when I talk about the preschool to prison pipeline, I'm actually talking about policies that encourage, unfortunately, harsh tactics, including physical restraints, these zero tolerance policies that result in suspension and out of class time, which are actually a huge contributor to the preschool to prison pipeline. But the problem is more complex than that. The school to prison pipeline is best avoided in the classroom. And that's why I'm so glad that you have me on your show, Teacher Talk, because when combined with zero tolerance policies, a teacher's decision to refer students for punishment can often mean that they're pushed out of the classroom and much more likely to be introduced into the criminal justice system. Educator, you find this as well, that students from two groups, racial minorities and children with disabilities, are disproportionately represented in the preschool to prison pipeline. African American students, as you've already shared, for instance, they're 3 to 4 more times more likely than their white classmates to be suspended or expelled according to a nationwide study conducted by the United States Department of Education Office for Civil Rights. So yes, we do have a problem. And this is my 27th year in education. And I tell you, I see this as a calling. I never, ever thought I would be an educator. And I started my career in 1994 at the city's alternative education high school secondary training education program known as the STEP Center. Shout out to my STEP scholars. And for the past 27 years, I've had the opportunity to serve the at-promise population, our students with special needs, and our scholars who just need more support. And I had an opportunity to serve as an educator, as an administrator, and now as a central office coordinator. And this topic of preschool to prison pipeline really is a great concern of mine, because I've seen so many of our scholars make mistakes that could have been dealt with differently. And just that one mistake ended up being the turning point of their lives. And they found themselves, unfortunately, a part of this hideous situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about Mr. Baldwin going back, right? Because I know times have changed, right? Since you entered the field of education, and how practices used to be back then versus how they are now. And some people may say it has maybe gotten a little worse as far as the attitudes and the practices that are still in place, like in-school suspension. I just recently saw on social media a 5-year-old being handcuffed because he wants to go to school. And the police officers, who were Black, talking to him as if he was a grown adult. So starting from preschool, Mr. Baldwin, what do you think are some of the problems or the barriers that Black families, Black and brown families have, that starts or ignites this pipeline?
Yeah, so I think it really starts with systemic institutionalized racism, policies and practices that have been put in place that contribute to this type of anti-racist practice that we see that occurs with our children. And that's where we have to start. We have to start with the policies and then the practices. We talk about schools. Schools do not create policy. And some people don't understand that. Schools don't create policy. Schools have practices.
That's right.
But school boards actually create policies. And the individuals that vote these school board members in, they participate in the policy-making process. So it starts right there. And then the other thing is we have to continue to educate everyone. We have to continue to educate our parents so they can be advocates for their children and understand that they have power, that they have the voice to change these policies and these practices because they have the power to vote. Yeah. We also have to educate teachers, giving teachers different tools in order to deal with students besides just putting them out of the classroom, and helping them to identify and recognize that whether they believe it or not, they have implicit bias.
That's right.
That the implicit bias also plays a role in how they engage in giving out consequences to students. And then we also have to educate members of law enforcement and all of the other stakeholders. I think that's where it starts. It starts with changing of policies and practices and educating. And you're educating us right now. You're providing us an opportunity because your show actually begins to normalize the conversation around these issues, these problems that we have. And yes, these are courageous conversations that must take place. And it will never change until we engage in actually talking about them.
Yes, I agree. So let's start with empowering parents, because I heard you say that first, right? So a lot of times parents aren't keen on the special education process. They're not
Mm.
keen on the policies that the school board and the school and local jurisdictions have in place for their kids. So my professional opinion would be, and I always tell parents this, if you're having a problem, let's say with your kindergartner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're having behavior issues, or maybe are getting screened for ADHD or ODD, all these various other behavior disorders. My first plan of attack when I talk to parents would be to seek out the pediatrician first.
Mm-hmm.
And go through the pediatrician and also look at the diet that the kid may
Mm-hmm.
be absorbing during the day, right? So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times that we don't believe that the junk food that we're feeding our kids is
Mm-hmm.
contributing to the behavior, the hyperactivity, the lack of the attention deficits that these kids may have. The
Mm-hmm.
mood swings, right? Because sugar will, excessive amounts of sugar will give mood swings and different types
Mm-hmm.
of sporadic activities that the behaviors that the kid may have. So
Mm-hmm.
when we empower our parents with those things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
before we even get to the teacher front, we need to know as parents
Mm-hmm.
what to do for our kids, right, at home. And a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
when these parents are undereducated or come from low income situations, they feel helpless sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So we've noticed in a district that we are accustomed to that the special education influx of those students for white students are higher in the beginning years, like in the
Mm-hmm.
elementary years. But then
Mm-hmm.
as time goes on, it becomes higher for African Americans,
Mm-hmm.
like the wave, it'll go down. So
Mm-hmm.
what's some other things that parents can do at home?
Good question. And so again, you're right. You know, what we see is the over identification of African Americans when it comes to receiving special education services. And that is a problem. But so true. Parent education is so important. And I think it starts just like you're sharing now, you know, with your parents. You know, I think as educators, we have not only a professional, but a moral responsibility to educate our parents, to educate all parents, to ensure that, you know, they know that, listen, you're not in this by yourself. Because when we're meeting the needs of the students, we also want to make sure that we're building relationships with those parents.
That's right.
It's about building a relationship. I'll say this over and over again. You know, I spent almost 30 years in this profession, and the one thing that I've learned is this: students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I'll say it again. Students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And parents are the same way.
That's
You know,
right.
we have some parents. You know, let's talk about it. We have some parents who have a great distrust of the public school system because of the experiences they had.
That's right.
And so we end up in a situation where we're trying to get parents to trust us, but we're dealing with the issue of broken trust. You know, it wasn't something that we did, but something that perhaps they experienced while they were in school, and they still have this distrust. So it starts there. It starts with building those relationships with students and building those relationships with parents, and letting them know that it's okay to ask for help.
That's right.
Most districts now, many districts have also parent advocates. I think the district we work for, actually, they have parent advocates that will help parents who have students with special needs. And I think it's important, again, it's incumbent upon us that when we see parents in need, that we may not have all the answers.
That's right.
But we should be willing to say, listen, be honest. I don't know, you know, the answers to your questions, but I can partner you with someone who knows. You know, I can help you get these resources that are available.
That's
And
right.
so I think it starts there. I think we have to be in many cases, that parent's advocate. And it's not about going against the system. Listen, we should all have the same goal in mind, and that's for all of our students to achieve, all of our students to be successful. And so I think it starts there. I think it starts with us being parent advocates and helping them partner with resources that will enable them to ensure that their child is able to be successful.
That's right. And empowering parents. And now let's pivot to teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, and I'm gonna be very honest, because I want to be honest with everybody, and I want to be honest with the parents and the constituents that we have out here in IG land. I think a lot of times they think that we have this magical wand to eradicate a lot of these issues, and we don't, right? Teachers, especially during this pandemic, we're learning just like the students are learning. And we were thrown into this whole spectrum within the 24-hour period. We had to change the way that we teach, right? But pre-COVID, we have this issue where you have teachers who don't believe that they are required to build and foster relationships with kids. They don't feel like they are required. Just because it's not in your job description, it does not mean that you're not going to do a house call, right? That you're not going to call a parent when you see some type of abnormal behavior going on with your kid. I have sat in meetings, Mr. Baldwin, with teachers, Black and white, right? That refuse to call a parent or say, oh, I don't have to call you if your kid is failing. You should be looking at the grade books that's live online. So I think that a lot of times we have to, as educators, we have to accept that role that, yes, we will have to crack open the grade book sometimes on a Friday night and shoot out emails to parents, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? But a lot of times, some teacher behaviors contribute to this pipeline. And we hate to say that, but it does, right? So you can have, it doesn't have to be a student getting kicked out of class. It can be a student being underserved inside of the classroom. So what are some things that teachers can do, in your perspective, from studying this restorative practices and studying the various things? Because on my last talk show, we talked about how teachers were putting kids out for not having pencils, right? And it was losing instruction and going sitting in ISS because they didn't have a pencil. So what are some things that teachers can do to help?
Good question. One of the things I've learned in my time is, not as teachers, not only must we teach from the head, but we must also teach with the heart.
Oh, I like that.
Realizing and recognize that we have students who go through challenges and obstacles that we have no idea of what they're dealing with. A lot of times, when a student comes to us and that student may be exhibiting behavior that we think is not conducive to learning, and that child is acting out, we're quick to ask the question, what's wrong with that child? But the question we should ask is, what happened to that child? What has this child experienced? What has this child been exposed to? There is this study out, ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences, and it talks about after you've experienced certain types of trauma, it not only impacts you socially, emotionally, mentally, but it even impacts how long you live. And so we need to realize and recognize that parents send to us the very best that they have. I'm a parent, and I assure you, I've received phone calls from the principal when my children were in school. But what I realize and recognize is that we have to continue as teachers, as educators, to find ways to support our students, to support our children that will allow them to have access to the curriculum. Because if we just keep putting them out, what happens is, if you're suspended, first of all, you're going to be unsupervised, and you'll find yourself in the street. The next thing you know, you'll end up in trouble. We also know that nearly 70% of state prisoners don't have a high school diploma.
Mm-hmm.
And for too many students, the pathway from the classroom to the courtroom, again, can begin as early as preschool. And that's why it's so important that we do our very best as teachers. First of all, realizing and recognize, yes, all of us have implicit bias. It's implicit because you don't know what that bias is. And something that really I struggle with when I hear an educator say, I don't see color. No, you see color, and that's the first thing. We have to be honest in our work, and we just have to continue to have these conversations. Also, I think we have to continue to support teachers and provide them with alternative suspensions. Continue to train teachers to use positive behavioral supports.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about PBIS, positive behavioral interventions and supports, teaching them about the importance of social emotional learning and giving them the tools to teach those students different coping skills that they can use when they find themselves in a situation where they have to make a tough decision. And our hope is that with the coping skills that we've given them, the tools that we've given them, provide them with, they'll make the right decision. Because, when students come to us, we have to teach them more that Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. We have to prepare them for life and how to navigate life's challenges.
Yes. And like I said, this is phenomenal. You're giving us so much wealth as to what this looks like, because in real time, when we are in these classrooms, and I like to say we are at war, right? I'm at war with trying to get that kid to understand the knowledge that I am trying to give him. But at the same time, it depends on my talent as a teacher and how I can articulate and create an environment where these kids actually want to learn. And I have some of my fellow special educators. We used to work together. Miss Freeman Jones, she's on here. We worked in the ED department, which is the emotionally disturbed students at Wise High School. Once a Puma, always a Puma.
All right, go Pumas.
Right. And she's BSU, so.
That's what's up.
Yeah, so we know exactly like how difficult it is to grasp and hook these kids. And I think that somebody said in the comments, which is true, Wired Dog 63, they said that we have to have teachers that are equipped and want to go out there in the workforce and change lives. So I know I'm a part of that team, right? And I know there's a bunch of educators in the building that are part of our force as to try and change the statistics. But a lot of these issues, Mr. Baldwin, I have noticed go back to the data in reading, okay? A lot of times students cannot read on grade level, right? And here's where I want to really get my elbows dirty, because parents, and I will say parents and teachers, but parents most of all, we have to get our kids reading on grade level. And here's why I start talking about reading. Because in the state of California, they build jails according to the reading scores for third graders, right? So if a kid is not reading on grade level by the third grade or the end of that school year, then they will most likely have a more difficult time catching up. And then they will not be able to perform academically, like satisfactorily, like other students. So normally there are high dropout rates, behavior issues that come about. And a lot of things are happen because of reading, right? Kids don't understand the importance of knowing how to read. You know, you have to have, what is it, a 900 Lexile just to read the newspaper fluently? So I want to encourage parents, and let's start looking at it from an academic standpoint. I know that we're all busy, but taking the time to make sure that our kids can read, because a lot of those prisoners that you referenced are illiterate adults.
Most definitely.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. Like, have you had any instances where one of the common denominators was a student not being able to read adequately, and that was a reason why a lot of the basics, we could talk about math all day, former math teacher, right? But reading, let's talk about that.
So one of the things I learned, and it really helped my practice, I was a new teacher, and I was keen on having students read out loud. That was the thing I thought that you do. You just have children read out loud, and then you go to the next child and you have them read out loud. Big mistake. Because what happens is when a child is forced to do something that they feel they can't do, they're not going to be embarrassed. They're going to act out. They're going to do whatever they can. Work a voice. They're going to do whatever they can to avoid.
It's sent out. They don't want to be there.
Exactly. So I think the first thing we have to do is, again, realize and recognize, when we see students that are struggling with reading, we engage in putting an intervention in place as soon as possible.
That's right.
As soon as we notice that, I'm talking as a parent, as our children are having problems, whether it's reading, which is, again, so important, because what happens is that, family, is that you have to read on grade level to even have a chance to pass these state mandated tests, these standard of learning. If you're not reading on grade level, you're not going to be able to pass these tests. So that's why it's so important. But again, early intervention is the key. Yes. Early intervention. We can't wait until that child gets to 8th grade, 10th grade, and try to teach that child how to read. That intervention should have been put in place when that child was in elementary school, as soon as possible. So as soon as we see that there's a challenge, we have to make sure that we do everything we can to put an intervention in place. And listen, beloved parents, I'm talking to you not just a parent, as an educator. If you feel that your child's teacher is not doing enough, that's when you need to call that principal. It's the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. As parents, we need to do whatever we can to ensure that our children receive the services, the supports, the interventions that they need in order to be successful.
That's right. And I know I have a 3rd grader, right? Yes, I have almost a college graduate, but I have a 3rd grader, and I was stuck on, and I made sure that she was reading above grade level. And here's my thing, because reading parents is so important, right? It enables them to understand, apply. They can use the application. They can retain information. They'll have to comprehend information. So just putting time aside, parents, for your elementary students, and even your high school and middle school students, if you know that they are not reading on grade level, right? Making sure that you are doing things at home too. Have them read out the recipe, make them read a few lines for you in a magazine, have them have structured reading time, at least 30 minutes a day, and make reading not so much a chore, right? Make it something fun for them to do, because a lot of these issues stem, in my professional opinion and in my research, a lot of these issues with pipeline to prison and behavior and social and emotional and racial disparities amongst our kids. A lot of the kids that's suffering, we can go back and look at the data, Mr. Baldwin, a lot of them cannot read on grade level.
And that's the truth. And it goes to what you said. We have to model this, parents. We have to model, having time at home. I never forget, and I never really understood it. First of all, I'm going to share this. I'm a 1st generation graduate. My mom dropped out in 4th grade. My dad dropped out in high school. And I was always amazed. However, my father had such a grasp on how important education was. I never forget, he would actually didn't have a lot of money, but the money he had, he was spending on books. And he would make sure we would have books all around the house, and we would watch him reading. Now, he read one book, for the record, you all, the Holy Bible, every day. He read the Bible every day, but he modeled it, so we saw him reading, we're reading, because we saw our parents. Listen, parents, we had this saying, children, don't do what you say, they do what you do. That's true. So I think it starts with us. We model it. And when we talk about, like you said, reading the recipes, great things to do at home that will prepare our students. And listen, I know this is, not a religious show, but I'm gonna share this with you. When I was growing up, one of the ways we learned how to read was in Sunday school. We learned how to read in Sunday school. So it was an entire community that was making sure that you would learn not only how to read, but how to be a pretty good person.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, I think it starts with that modeling. And listen, if you are a parent and you may not be a great reader, it's okay. At least as your child is seeing you read, seeing you modeling it, then they're going to do it. They're going to do exactly what they see us do. To borrow from that Clint Eastwood movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
That's right. And this is so true. So parents, I want to hammer that home. Mr. Baldwin, I want to make sure that we reference that, because I have seen it. It's so sad to sit in an IEP meeting, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
For a student,
mm-hmm.
and the student can be 18 years old, all right? And the parent is there, and I'm looking at the data. I'm hearing about all the issues that the kid is having in school. Maybe the kid is
Mm-hmm.
having issues with retaining information, or cussing out teachers, or being respectful, or
Mm-hmm.
getting up and walking out. There's so many things that we could put in the IEP to try and modify behaviors. But
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Baldwin, I always, when I'm sitting in those meetings, the first thing I look at, my first line is, I'm a math person, I'm a numbers person. So I look at data.
Sure.
Men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie, right? So
Yes.
when I look at the data, I go back all the way back to third grade reading scores, fourth grade
Mm-hmm.
reading scores, and I will find the problem sitting in a meeting for the first 5 to 10 minutes, right? All we have to do is sift through the data. And a lot of times we have students that are 18 reading have Lexile scores of maybe a 500. And that is the crux. That's the basis of the problem, right? So if a kid is reading, and I have it, and I say this all the time, it is very few instances where a kid is academically flourishing, and a kid that we can look at two kids, one that's flourishing academically and one that's not. Very, very, very seldom the data is the same, right? So a lot of the deficits we have in basic arithmetic, basic reading, goes hand in hand with the issues that kid is having. Too many of our Black boys cannot read on grade level. And I want to start there, because I have seen the data over and over again. So parents, we really have to accommodate our children. We really need to sit down and see if your 15-year-old son can read, or daughter, right? Because then we need to have a plan of action once we figure out that my kid can't read this sentence properly, right? So then we start contacting principals and seeking help. And it's okay to get a tutor in reading. These are things that we have to do as parents, right? And as teachers, because they're going to get identified. And we can stop the identification process from being so heightened if we will really do our jobs as parents and catch this stuff at home, because we see it at home, right?
Yeah, and that's where equity comes in, because unfortunately we have parents that do not have the additional financial resources to get that tutor, or to send them to I remember we used to have one called Sylvan Learning Center. I want to talk about a personal experience. Social economics, education, all that comes into play. I never forget the first time that my son took the SAT. He did not score as well as he would like. And so we realized and recognized that we need to get him some support. And we heard about this program that was offered at a neighboring school around the corner from the school that we used to be a part of. Ireton was still a part of. And when he went there and he completed that structured course, his scores increased dramatically. And what I learned is this: All students, again, can learn if they're provided with the appropriate support and resources.
That's right.
And that's something, that equity issue is something that we still struggle with. And it goes back again to what we talked about earlier, being advocates. And we have, again, a professional and a moral responsibility when we see parents with children and their children are struggling. We have to assume that they want the best for their children. Nobody wants their child to struggle. And that's when we do our very best to partner them with resources. And I'm talking about free and affordable resources.
Yes.
Because everyone couldn't afford this course that we were able to send my son to. But I know that if you sent any of our children who were struggling through that course, they would experience success. So, again, that's where equity comes in. It's not that, one child is bright because of a certain pedigree or ethnicity. You do have children, however, who have more than a head start.
Mm-hmm.
And you have children who, because of their situation, because again, this lack of equity, that they already start at a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. So the struggle is just, to move them to the starting line so they can start the race. And again, that's where we come in. That's our role, and I think sometimes, some educators forget, there was somebody that helped me, that helped you, that helped all of us along the way. If it was not for a counselor at my high school who called me to the carpet, I would not be sitting here today in nearly 30 years of education. I would not be. Sometimes all it takes is that one counselor, that one teacher, that one custodian, that one bus driver, that one cafeteria worker to speak life into you.
That's right. That's right. And that's what we need. We need more educators like that. We need we need the support of the village, because these kids get into these classrooms. And let me tell you, we get these babies and they could have had the worst morning, right? They could have had the worst night. And we are responsible as educators. And I don't care what people say, oh, that's not my job to be her social worker and her mama. Yes, it is. Because we have to take care of these children. And I always tell my kids, you are my children from 8:15 to 3:30, right? And you make sure that these kids have the opportunity to lean on you as an expert in your field for supports. So I am just floored at the lack of, and I can put it on teachers, I can put it on parents, we can shuffle the blame around, right?
Sure.
But that's not what we're doing here. We want to make sure that whatever we're doing is student-centered, right? Baldwin. So what's something that a high school parent can do to try to stop, let's say her son, let's say Derek is going down the wrong path? What's some things that a high school parent, because when we have little kids, it's kind of easier for us to wrap our arms around those babies. Well, what are some things high school parents can do for their children?
Don't suffer in silence. We're a village. Reach out. I'll share this right now. I have a colleague, and we were talking, and we both have sons the same age. And it's funny because what happens is, children, they tend to receive information from their peers and even from other adults better than they do from parents. And so this parent reached out. I said, I'll be glad to help. And so now me and this young man have such a special relationship. We actually meet for only 30 minutes every Thursday. And he texted me yesterday. He said, I'm in a waiting room, Mr. Baldwin. Where are you? And I had to text it back. I said, remember, I said I was going to be on spring break. And then we were going to have our next meeting after spring break, April 8th. And I'm telling you, we have to reach out to the village. There are people that will help us that, don't suffer in silence. And sometimes, our children just have to hear a different voice.
That's
but
right.
Every single young person needs to have an adult in their life that they can depend on, that will advocate for them.
That's right.
and not trying to be a father figure. You know, if our young brothers, they'll tell you quickly, you know, I don't need a daddy, especially if they've had bad situations, you know, with their fathers, but just someone that can mentor, someone that can be a listening ear. You know, it starts there, you know, making sure that we also realize as parents that, you know, during this time, you know, our young people tend to listen to their peer group. That's where they get most of the information from. And so, you know, again, realizing, recognizing that we might not be the smartest person in the world to them, but give them a few years, we're the greatest thing since sliced bread.
That's
But I
right.
think, again, whenever we find an issue, don't suffer in silence. Listen, we have too many resources available. You know, find a teacher you can trust, or someone in the community that's an advocate that you can trust, and work with that person. I really do believe in that ancient African proverb, and you alluded to it earlier. It takes a village to raise a child.
That's
It
right.
really does, because when it's all said and done, that child is going to go back and be a part of that village.
That's
So
right.
we want to make sure again that when that child becomes a part of that village, that child is a productive member of that village. And when we look at, you know, we look at indigenous societies didn't have this understanding of individualism. It was all about the collective. It was all about the village, that if one failed, we all fail. But if one succeeds, we all succeed. So again, just that paradigm shift right there. Don't
Yes.
suffer in silence. If your
Yeah.
child is struggling, find a Miss Lewis. Go to a Miss Lewis and say, my child needs help. And I guarantee you, you will get it.
That's right. This is awesome. We have so many comments. The comment sections are blowing up. Let's talk about MG. I believe that's the wonderful Mr. Coach Marshall's wife. That is Maria. Um, she said, Mr. Baldwin, you're an amazing mentor to my children and my hubby. Mr. Lewis, you're an amazing educator. Thank you. I want to go up to where Allie, she's a new educator over at TC Williams in the CTE department. She stated a little bit earlier that proactive parenting, let me find it. Here we go. Proactive parenting narrows the pipeline because it welcomes open communication and seeking interventions and support. So that's a great thing. And also somebody said the teacher sets the tone for that learning environment. And also, Wire Dog has so many great things that he's added to the conversation.
My brother.
Seek help from other parents in the neighborhood too. And that's important because a lot of times we don't do that, right? I notice in white communities, they have mom circles. They have various different types of interventions that they put in place for each other. My daughter attends a school in Old Town, an elementary school, and Old Town Alexandria, and there are tons of emails that come out, and that's a majority white school. Tons of emails that come out for these parent groups that they have. Every week is a different parent group, and they meet on the playground, they meet at Starbucks, they meet on the local rec centers, on the yards, or what have you. And they talk about various issues that's going on with their children. And I think that's a missing component that some Black and brown families may have. Well, I'm gonna always reference Black families because I don't know what, families, Hispanic families may ensue. But I know a lot of us, we may not participate in those type of things, like meeting with each other and discussing what's going on with your kid. Your kid has an IEP, my kid too. So let's talk about those things. Let's talk about how Derek was put out on Thursday, and you say your child was not receiving the math services. Let's talk. We need to really get together and start talking about how our kids are being treated in these schools. Whether our kids are receiving the services they are supposed to receive, and whether or not our kids have the proper teachers in place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's
You
talk
know,
about class selection. Go ahead. Go ahead. I know you was about to say something. I'm long.
no. I agree. I think the thing that we have to deal with um, is that stigma. There's still a stigma associated with a child receiving special education services, a child having an IEP, an individualized education program or plan. And I think we have to work with our parents to let them know, listen, just because your child has an IEP uh, does not mean your child cannot learn. It just means that your child needs more support. You know, I used to have students, and I would correct them. They'd be in a situation like, "Well, Mr. Baldwin, I'm LD. What do you expect?" And I said,
Right?
"No, I'm not going there. I have a learning disability." I said, "No, LD means you just learn different."
Right.
That's all that means. And it means that as your teacher, I need to find a way to make sure that you learn this information because we all don't learn the same way.
That's
But I
right.
think, and really, it starts with, again, that relationship piece. Any of my scholars, I started in 1994, and they will tell you from 1994 on to now, you ask it what I call them, and they'll say scholar. They laugh and joke, and now they'll refer to me as OG scholar. The older ones refer to me as Super B. That's a story for another day, or Dean Baldwin. But you got to speak, and you have to speak life again into students.
That's
You know,
right.
I always saw every student before me, as a scholar. Now let me tell you this also. In all sincerity, I didn't always get it right. There's many regrets that I have. If I could go back and change things when I served as dean of students, when I served as a teacher, I would. But I
Right.
realize and recognize I can't go back in time. But what I can do is share from my mistakes. And again, it starts with relationships, not giving up on any student. Students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. They don't care about your degrees, your pedigree, your accomplishments, your achievements, or your accoutrements. The
That's
only thing
right.
they want to know is, do you really care about me? And that's where it starts.
That's
And
right.
getting past that stigma. And like my brother shared, reaching out to other parents. Again, I keep saying this, especially during this dual pandemic of systemic racism and COVID-19. Please do not suffer in silence.
That's
There is
right.
somebody going through what you're going through. And if
That's
you
right.
need help, there's always somebody there that's willing to help you. And if you don't know where to get the support, listen, reach out to them. We're here. We're
That's right.
here to point you in the right direction.
That's right. Somebody mentioned that we need to see more Black males inside of the classrooms. Do you agree with
Mm.
that, Mr. Baldwin?
That has most definitely, it's been a struggle since I've been in Alexander City Public Schools. Many of you may know I'm a graduate of the newly, slowly but surely renamed Alexandria High School, formerly known as T.C. Webbs High School. I'm a graduate. And I can count on one hand the number of Black males I saw as teachers and administrators. And let me just say this, and I got to get this out. It just does something to your sense of self-esteem. Now, don't get me wrong. My late mother was a cafeteria hostess, and she was a phenomenal cafeteria hostess. My late father was a school custodian. So while my mother was cleaning tables at Mount Vernon Elementary, my father was cleaning toilets at George Washington Middle School. I'm telling you, great examples, great role models. But when I was going through school, that's all we saw. When we looked at Black and brown people, we saw them in the role as a custodian or a cafeteria worker. Again, noble profession. But if you don't see Black men as teachers, if you don't see Black men as administrators, then you don't see yourself being that one day. And that's why I think it's so important that we have people in all positions that look like the children that we serve. And so, yes, there is a need for more Black men, for more brown men to be in education as teachers and as administrators. And also with this whole thing with xenophobia, also we need to see more of our Asian brothers and our Asian sisters in education and in leadership. I think that helps self-esteem so much. And our children realize and recognize that, listen, if they can do it and they look like me, I can do it too.
And I want to add to that because, you know, you skated over that. You gave a lot of information, but you skated over your premise and in your aura when you walk into the building, because people out there, and I know you have some former students and your daughter's on here, but I just wanted to let you know that when I first noticed you in the building, when I first met you, right? I said, now that is a well accomplished, polished brother, right? And not only do the kids see you, they see a Black man, of course, but they also see a Black man in a suit every single day.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something, that alone, Mr. Baldwin, right, sends waves of encouragement. And it also helps the esteem of these Black boys. They look at you, and I have heard students say, oh, I got to get dressed up and fly like Mr. Baldwin, like Dean Baldwin. You know, I have seen it, and I just want you to know that every day when you wake up and you walk into that building, right, that your presence alone have probably saved so many lives and have encouraged so many students, because not only do you talk the talk, you walk the walk. And you are a model example for these students. You can catch Baldwin any day, y'all. And I always mess with him because, you know, we talk about his designer labels that he have on, and from his Kappa sweatshirts to the, you know, but he is always dressed, and you are always the shining examples for our young Black boys, Black and brown and Caucasian and Asian brothers in the building. So I just want to add that, because not only does representation matters, it also matters how you are representing yourself. So the suit and tie and the bow ties, I appreciate all of those things that you, even though you might not think it's much, but you change lives just by your appearance, Mr. Baldwin. And I just want to say that.
You
and
make
you have
my
students
day.
in here. We have, I call her Rara. But I taught her, she was probably in your academy too. Facts, I've always loved him because he's from Del Rey.
All day.
Lead by example. Mr. Bowtie, you're always polished, class act. So that's another thing that teachers need to make sure that they adopt. Yes, we do need more representation of Black males in the classroom, but remember, when you step into those classrooms, those kids are watching you. They know when you got your hair cut. They know when you probably having a difficult time. They notice everything. They notice our lashes. They notice everything. Women, men, you know. So I just want to thank you for that, because you are a class act.
Thank you so much.
I don't have sons, but if I had a son, I would make sure that you would talk to him and
you are so cool.
be mentored by him. Also, Mr. Baldwin, you also used to do I don't know if you still do it.
Young Stars.
Young Stars, yes. So tell us a little bit about that.
So the Young Stars Success Program actually was started by my mentor, Dr. Lawrence Edward Jointer, who served formerly as the Director of Student Services. And long story short, in his role, he was Director of Pupil Services. If a student ended up getting suspended for a major infraction and was recommended for expulsion, they were sent to central office. They would have to meet with Dr. Jointer. And Dr. Jointer, he said he just got tired of suspending boys that looked like him, Black boys. And so he called us all together. Wow, I would say at least 20 years ago. He sent out an email to Black men who served in education and also in city agencies, and we came together and we started the Young Star Success Program. And we were intentional about it. We identified, I don't want to say at risk, at promise, males. And we've had Black, we've had white, we've had Asian, we've had white males be a part of that program. And many of them said that it really did change their life. And so again, this whole idea of it takes a village to raise a child. And I think, again, you know, this is, it's not an easy job. But if it was easy, you know, any and everybody could do it. And so again, I'm grateful for having, you know, the opportunity to serve. And again, I'm so grateful that we have phenomenal educators like you, Ms. Lewis, that continue to make sure that all students have an opportunity to experience success.
Yes. And another thing, audience, family, like Mr. Baldwin said, you have also, because you kept saying scholar, 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 I adapt things from various people who are successful in my right. I believe that the way you say scholars and how you talk to the kids, I do that too, Mr. Baldwin. I think I have adopted your practice like maybe 4 years ago, right? And I go back and forth between calling my, you know, brother or sister, and then, you know, scholars. And so in my emails, I just want you to know that too, that I stole that from you.
I love it.
You know, I call my kids scholars also. So, and I think it's just small things that you change about your approach, right? Showing that you care. And different, if a kid know, like you said, if they know that you're coming from your heart and you're genuine, then they are more susceptible to trusting you. And I remember earlier, I saw somebody in the comments that said that classroom management and relationship building is a skill set. Because a lot of people just don't want to deal with that, right? A lot of people don't understand that building relationships is important. And a lot of times we think that if we grew up in a strict household, that we're not supposed to be friends with these kids or forge these professional relationships. We need to keep it on the straight and narrow. And I think that that is the wrong information to give a teacher. I have sustained plenty of relationships with students throughout the years, and I know you have too. So let's talk about very quickly, because I know our time is coming to an end. But I want you to speak more on that relationship piece and how the relationship, the student-teacher relationship, can help mitigate the pipeline, the prison idea.
Most definitely. So, you know, first we talk about relationship, you know, we talk about professional relationship. And again, you could be professional and have a relationship with students without students being your very best friend. You know, students that had me, you know, they knew my relationship with them. I treated the young men, I did my very best to treat them as I would my own son. And the young ladies, they knew it would either be scholars or daughters, because I wanted them to know the relationship that we had was one of respect. And because I respected them, they respected me back. And one of love. You know, I've every child that I've had, I know that I have not gotten it right. I know every time. There's some students who love me. There was some like, I can't stand him. I realize and recognize that. But I would hope that I did my very best to try to build that relationship. But that's what it's about, you know. And again, you know, this is a profession, but it's also a calling. I'm gonna be honest. There are some folk who they're just not called to this profession, and you can see it. You know, if you don't like kids, if you don't want to build relationships, if you don't believe every child can learn, you shouldn't be in this profession. If you think every day is going to be a great day, you shouldn't be in this profession. You're going to have some days where it's going to be more challenging than others. But I do believe, again, it's about relationships. If you build a relationship with a student and that student knows that you care for them, let me tell you something. You can get that child to do anything you want.
That's right.
Anything you want. There'll be no mountain they cannot climb. There'll be no star they can't reach. If you believe in them, if you tell them enough that they can do it, if you call a child a scholar enough, eventually they'll start referring to themselves as a scholar. But it starts with us. You got those stars in the background right now. That's exemplary of what you are about, helping every child to become a star. So, hey, keep doing what you're doing, Ms. Lewis. We appreciate you.
You keep doing what you're doing, Mr. Baldwin. I'm gonna have a circle though, because I'm
So I get a circle. Look, I got about
gonna
3 more
need a
years and
stamp
I'm
circle.
retiring. Three
When
more
we
years
come
and I'm
back,
retiring.
yes, when we
3 more
come back,
years,
I'm
Miss
gonna need some
Lewis.
restorative with
We'll do it.
the whole phasing back into the classroom. I've been
Let's do it. Let's do it. But I got 3 more years. Look, 3 more years before I retire, Miss Lewis. So you got me for 3 more years, and then I'm on.
three. That's it. That's all you give me. 3 more
I
years.
got. I'm gonna give him 30. I'm gonna give him 30. So and then I'm gonna sit back on the deck.
Well, I hope. Well, 3. Mr. Baldwin, that's too early. You're gonna have to stay. You're gonna have to be like Mr. Kokonis. You're gonna have to stay for at least until you're like 89.
The
We're
legend.
not gonna
But
let
again,
you
Miss
leave.
Lewis, I tell you, every time I get up in the morning, I feel like I'm making a difference. I'm here. So I just have enjoyed my time with my scholars. And many of them, they really make my heart smile because they reach out and talk about how much they appreciate me. But I tell them all the
Yes.
time that they poured more into me than I ever could pour into them, and so I'm totally indebted for being loved by some of the greatest human beings that have ever been created. So again, my journey has truly been a joy.
Yes, and listen, I have never heard a kid walk the halls and say, "I can't stand Mr. Baldwin." You know
Oh,
why?
that's not my name.
Because of that relationship building piece and how great you are as an example for these brothers that's out here and sisters. I've never heard a young lady walk the halls and say, "I can't stand Dean Baldwin. He get on my nerves." But you know what I do hear? I hear that you are so genuine and you are so great when we start talking about building these relationships. You get in there deep with the parents, and you let the parents know that I'm here for your kid, and at the same time I'm supporting your child. So we have to have this reciprocal relationship, and that is so important. And I think that once you give us your last 3 years, you just need to open up a school on teaching teachers how to teach.
Oh, you're
We
too
don't want you
kind.
to be free. You should think about it. You should open up a
Okay,
consulting company, Mr.
I'm gonna
Baldwin.
think about it right now. I'm gonna talk to you. You can my coach. So we'll talk.
Right,
You can
right.
coach me through the process.
But thank you so much, Mr. Baldwin. This was so great for us to have this conversation, and I want you back so we could also have more conversations about more things. And hopefully parents and teachers can leave here with some information. So just to sum some things up, Mr. Baldwin talked about the positive relationships that you have to build inside and outside of the classroom. Parents understanding that there is a support for them and they should not suffer in silence, right? Also, that a lot of parents should make sure that they know about the resources that are available to them within the districts that are free, right? Free of cost that they can access. What's some other things, Mr. Baldwin, you said before? I'm trying to go off the top of my dome.
You basically covered it. And again, it takes a village to raise a child. We're all in this together. So again, always feel free, to reach out. Use those resources that are available to you.
Yes,
And if every time you find yourself in a situation and you need help, again, don't suffer in silence. There's always someone who is going through what you're going through, who's been through what you've been through, will be willing to help partner with you. And we just want you to know that we're here.
that's right. Oh, and parents, read with your kids. That's make sure we're reading. And right, what's one thing, and I'm gonna leave you with this. I like to take notes on. I'm a very organized person, so I like to take notes on my
We
kid.
know.
Right, every week I look and see what kind of anecdotal notes that I have taken on Layla because she's in the 3rd grade. She's developing, but I think parents, we need to really, really sit down and observe our kids and make sure that our kids are getting everything that they receive and communicate with the teachers. We like to receive emails from you. We do. Right. And communicate and find out what it is restorative practices is, right? And connect with you and give us a way that we can connect with you once we leave from here, Mr. Baldwin.
Sure. So I can give you my personal email address. Also, I think that's probably the best way. and it's pastor and educator at gmail.com.
Pastor and the educator, A&D,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. At
at Gmail.
gmail.com. I
All
was going to
right.
say gov, but it's at it should be com.
All
Personal
right.
email address.
I have posted it so that, and also everybody knows your G Baldwin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your IG handle, G
Right,
Baldwin
1911.
1911, right? Okay,
Yeah,
you know
G
I should have
Baldwin
known.
1911. Yeah, you got to put the 1911 in there. Yes, indeed.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Baldwin. We had a great
Thank you.
conversation today, and it's always a pleasure. And I know that a lot of students on here have received some information, and they know the experience that they have had with you. And I'm just so blessed to know you, and I'm so fortunate to have you as my friend. So
Yes.
thank you, brother. Even when you don't know you're making an impact, you're still making an impact on adults too. So
Love you, and thank you again for the opportunity to be on the #1 teacher talk show on social media, Teacher Talk.
yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, bye everyone.
Bye,
And
scholars.
enjoy your Easter holidays. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.